On one end, we have a deep examination of the history influences that encourage throwaway lifestyles, particularly in America, and how it's exponentially grown over the last 50 years in the form of mass consumption at the beginning of this text. And on the other end, we have the solution of collaborative consumption to reserve the amount of consumption and lifestyles in this text. This is a very thorough and thoughtful book, as it not only highlights the influences of these lifestyles and this type of consumption, but also assesses how these products and services that attributed to mass consumption were communicated, and how it's not only impacted the economy, but how it's impacted our relationships, both our internal relationship with ourselves as well as with those around us. And a quote that really put in perspective the true effect of mass consumerism, and that quote being featured on the slide here, speaks to how there are more shopping centers than American high schools at this point in which the text was written. I'm Kayla Goodwin, and this is my book review on What's Mine Is Yours by Rachel Botsman and Rue Rogers. So the text is broken into 3 parts, part 1 being context, part 2 being groundswell, and part 3 being impact. But bringing it a level up and looking at the framework for this text per the theories that were covered in Island and Fredrickson's text, both social forces as well as social interactions play a role in this text. We see elements of how mass consumption can impact Harris's relations and Meyer's PR in the context of world society, as well as Putnam's theories of community and social capital. The book itself is broken into 3 parts, as I mentioned, and so we'll look into these parts a little further in the next slide. The book begins with exploring context in reference to the history around consumption and consumerism. And so as a marketing professional, personally, to get someone to consume is really an integral part of my role. And so reading about this really touched very close to home for me. And then reading about the history products or the history of products that came out of mass consumption, such as Dixie cups, made me understand how people could find the product beneficial, as it was something that was positioned as being more sanitary and easier to commute with. However, the book doesn't question whether the product was beneficial, but puts the focus on the larger impact that the product has on communities and societies. And there's some really notable quotes and scenarios that came out of this text. For part 1, speaks to a quote from Fight Club, which is the things you own end up owning you. 2, a quote speaking to just how we are taught to dream and desire new things from an early age, as we're frequently asked, what do we want for Christmas, or what do we want for our birthday? There is also these tragic situations that happen, such as the Walmart security guard death over a $700 TV after being trampled by a crowd, and credit cards and the buy now and pay later services, and planned obsolescence. There's so many examples here where we see how people are driven to consume or participate in mass consumerism, but the recognition at times to understand how impactful those things are adversely, this is where the book really starts to break that down. And this is where we start seeing the book's solution of collaborative consumption. So there are systems and lifestyles and products and services within collaborative consumption that makes it very different than mass consumption or mass consumerism. And so we see a new kind of economy by which we don't just buy things, use them, and throw them out. We share them and save them and pass them along in collaborative consumption. And so there are some principles within collaborative consumption as well. Critical mass, idling capacity, belief in the commons, and trust between strangers. And so these elements are really important to not only create a service, but create an environment or create a product where there is a collaboration and a relational piece. These are really important factors in order to make a structure like collaborative consumption something that people want to participate in and that can be sustainable far down the line. And then the text highlights how, for example, local farmers markets have become the fastest growing part of the American food economy. And then we see, of course, how the internet has paved the way for collaborative consumption, such as through fresh food, of course, like finding out about farmers markets, as well as relationships through websites like Match.com. And so wrapping up with part 3, we finalize our understanding of collaborative consumption and begin the conversation around what it would look like to make this sort of system something that can be sustainable long term. And so first, of course, we look at the emphasis on community engaging with each other through services like shared workspaces, Airbnb, and Uber. And then with opportunities like this, hopefully they will be able to reduce some of these very jarring stats that we see from the text, such as 10.8 billion Australian dollars are spent on unused products annually. And so, we now have these redistribution markets like eBay and Facebook. And so hopefully with these, they will, one, help us rid of the things that we've mass consumed, and two, make there less of a need to purchase things in abundance. And so the goal really is to reverse what is the consumer mindset from the beginning, which is mass consumption, and going to a space of saving and restoring and preserving for the future of our resources. So what can communication professionals gain from reading What's Mine is Yours? One, I will give this book a thumbs up in commemoration of Roger Ebert, as it is really a thorough and thoughtful text that provokes deep thinking and a deep awareness of what we consume, how we talk about what we consume, and how these products or services can have an impact on the future of our economy and our communities. And then two, looking deeper into the purpose of this text, it gives businesses, one, a call to action to create more sustainable products and services. And then two, as professionals, communication professionals, it makes us have a deeper look at our responsibility of speaking to things in ways that are valuable and true and for the better good of society and our communities. And so with this text, a communication professional can look deeper into historical climate, present climate of consumerism, its economic and relational consequences that come of it, understanding how we can be conditioned to participate in mass consumption, and understanding the value of a sharing culture and community in place of mass consumption. Thank you.